Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Spruce Sports Central. Today, I'm going to be filling out my bracket and we'll be going over my 2024 NCAA Tournament predictions. So, we're going to be going through things round by round. We'll do the first round on both sides of the bracket, then the second round, and so forth and so on. Beginning things with the East region, we have the number one overall seed UConn taking on Stenson. This is really easy to pick. I'm never going to pick a 16 seed to beat a 1 seed. I know it happened last year, but a 16 seed has beaten a 1 seed just twice in 152 tries. I also think UConn is the most unlikely 1 seed to lose early. Moving on to FAU against Northwestern. So this is a really tough game to predict. Florida Atlantic made a surprising run to the Final Four last season. They're back in the 8-9 game, and they now face a Northwestern team that is banged up. They will be without Ty Burry and potentially without Matthew Nicholson, and you definitely don't want to be shorthanded here in the tournament. So I'm going to take FAU to advance. Moving to San Diego State against UAB. San Diego State is another team that made a Final Four run last season, and 3 of the Final Four teams from last year are actually in the same region. UConn, FAU, and San Diego State. The fourth team, Miami, was so bad they didn't even make the tournament. Now, for this game, there's always 12/5 upsets, but this is the game I'm the most confident with when it comes to the 5-12 games. San Diego State is a great defensive team, ranking 8th in adjusted defensive rating, while they hold opponents to just 40% from the field. And then for UAB, they are the 4th worst tournament team in terms of adjusted defensive rating, and they give up over 75 points a game. So this is a game where I can confidently say the 5 seed will not be upset. Moving to Yale and Auburn, this is another interesting one. Auburn, they have great metrics. They're top 10 in both adjusted offensive and defensive rating. And now for Yale, they're coming off a win in the Ivy League title game with a buzzer beater over Brown. And I think Yale could make this interesting, but I've got Auburn with the win. Next up, we have BYU and Duquesne. So Duquesne's coming off a good run in the A10 tournament to even get here. They look to continue their momentum against BYU, but BYU shoots the ball very well from 3. They're a very good offensive team, and I have them advancing. Illinois against Morehead State is our next matchup. Illinois looked good in the Big Ten tournament. They won the Big Ten tournament, coming off a win over Wisconsin. Their offense is really good, led by Terrence Shannon Jr. Illinois scores 84.2 points a game, which ranks 11th nationally, and I like them in the win here. I just don't think Morehead State can either stop Illinois or keep up with them. Washington State and Drake is a very interesting one. This is really tough to predict. Drake won the Missouri Valley for the 2nd consecutive year, and I picked Drake last season to get a first-round upset, but they lost to an eventual Final Four team in Miami. Now they face Washington State, who has been good this year, and I think both these teams could end up being sleeper teams in the tournament. And this is really tough for me to predict, but I'm going to take Drake. They're good offensively, led by Tucker DeVries, who's the son of Coach Darian DeVries. And Drake also shoots extremely well from 3, as 4 of their top 5 scorers are over 34% from beyond the arc. And as a team, they shoot 36.7% from 3, which is 33rd in the country. So for my first upset of the tournament, give me the Drake Bulldogs over Washington State. And the final game of the East round, the East region first round, we have Iowa State against South Dakota State. Iowa State's decent, but I'm probably never going to pick a 15 seed to beat a 2 seed, even though it has happened the last 3 seasons and the last 3 years. The 15 seeds also made at least the Sweet 16, but I'm probably never going to pick that, and definitely not Iowa State, who looked really good in the Big 12 title game against Houston. Moving to the West region, beginning with North Carolina against the winner of Howard and Wagner. Again, what I said about 1 seeds, I'm never going to pick them to lose in the first round. North Carolina is too good. They're not losing here in the first round. Mississippi State and Michigan State is interesting because you never want to count out Tom Izzo, especially in March Madness. But these are 2 really similar teams. About 60th in offensive rating, about top 20 in defensive rating. I'm going to take Michigan State because I trust Tom Izzo in March. But this is a true coin flip. I've got Michigan State moving on. St. Mary's and Grand Canyon is a game that could be a 12-5 upset. St. Mary's is good, though. They won the WCC tournament, beat Gonzaga twice. But Grand Canyon is one of those teams that won a lot of games in the regular season. They're 29-4, and they can score. But I'm going to take St. Mary's to just barely avoid the upset. They have a good defense, and I think that's the difference. They will be just good enough, and their defense has been good in games against other good offenses like Gonzaga, who they've beat twice. Plus, St. Mary's themselves has 5 players averaging double figures, so I've got St. Mary's just barely avoiding the upset. Moving on to Alabama against Charleston. So this game is going to be really high scoring. Both these teams can really score the basketball. Alabama leads the country in scoring, averaging 90.8 points per game, and Charleston is 35th, scoring 80.5 points a game. So while I do think there is a potential upset in this game, I think Alabama just scores too much and they will advance. Next game, we have Clemson against New Mexico. So New Mexico is playing really well right now. They just won the Mountain West tournament. They beat essentially all the good Mountain West teams, and they can score. Now for Clemson, they have the better defensive team, but I'm going to take New Mexico in the 11/6 upset here. I just really don't think Clemson is amazing, and New Mexico State's been pretty good, especially in the Mountain West tournament. Baylor against Colgate is our next game. This is a game where I just don't see Baylor losing. They're the better team. Upsets do happen, but got Baylor with the win. Dayton and Nevada is interesting. Dayton lost really early in the A10 tournament, losing in the quarterfinal. And they can bounce back, especially if they can shoot the three, because they were the third best 3-point shooting team in the country. But Nevada is a good defensive team, and they also defend the three very well. So I'm going to take Nevada here, but my gut says Dayton. But I got the slight upset. Arizona against Long Beach State is not really that interesting, although there is an interesting story about Long Beach State. Because they fired their coach they mutually parted ways with their coach before their conference tournament started. Long Beach State then kept winning, ended up winning their conference tournament, and now they're here in the NCAA tournament. But moving on to the South region, beginning with Houston against Longwood. Again, I'm just not picking a 1 seed to lose in the first round. Houston moves on. Nebraska and Texas A&M is another really tough game to predict. Texas A&M doesn't shoot the ball particularly well. Nebraska's been good this season. I'll take them in a close game. Wisconsin against James Madison is another tough one to predict. And James Madison is one of those double-digit seeds that won a ton of games this season, as they are one of 4 teams in the tournament that won more than 30 games. And they also score a lot, scoring 84.4 points a game, led by Terrence Edwards, who averages 17 a game. Plus, James Madison shoots the ball very well. For Wisconsin, they're coming off a loss in the Big Ten tournament final to Illinois. They can definitely get the win. They have good metrics, top 15 in offensive rating, but I've got James Madison with the upset win. Next game, we have Duke against Vermont. Duke struggled at the end of the season, losing their 2 most recent games to North Carolina and NC State in the ACC tournament, but I think they'll get the win here. Vermont just won't be able to stop Kyle Filipowski and Duke advances. NC State and Texas Tech is really interesting. This is a really tough game to predict. NC State's coming off a huge run in the ACC tournament to even make it to this point, and they now find themselves as an 11 seed. And they actually remind me a lot of Georgetown from the 2021 tournament, where Georgetown went on a huge run, won the Big East, ended up being a 12 seed. They played Colorado, were one of the most picked upsets in the first round and lost. NC State is also a very widely picked upset, and I think they could get the win here, but I've got Texas Tech with the win. They're a good offensive team, but NC State definitely has potential for the upset. Kentucky against Oakland. Kentucky will get the win here. They are the second highest scoring team in the country behind Alabama. They score the ball really well. They shoot the three really well. They're the best 3-point shooting team in the country. Top 5 in adjusted offensive rating. Oakland's decent. They could put up a fight, but they won't be able to hang with Kentucky for long. They'll just score way too much. Next game, we have Florida against the winner of Colorado and Boise State. So Florida, they had a good run in the SEC tournament, making the final, but they lost in the championship game, and they also lost Micah Handwalton, hopefully I said his name correctly, to a leg injury. Now, he's not a star for the team, but he is a solid player who plays about 20 minutes a night. Now, as far as Colorado and Boise State go, That's a tough game. The winner of that game could definitely get by Florida, but I think Florida's a little bit underrated. They're a good offensive team, and I've got them getting the win. Next, we have Marquette against Western Kentucky. So Marquette, they've been out without star guard Tyler Kolek for the past few weeks. They made the Big East tournament final without him, ended up losing to UConn. But with or without Tyler Kolek, they'll be able to get the win, but he is expected to return for the tournament. Moving on to Purdue against the winner of Grambling and Montana State. So Purdue lost to a 16 seed last year. It's not going to happen again. They're a better overall team. They're more well-rounded around Zach Edey, and Purdue will easily get the win. Next game, we have Utah State against TCU. This is another really difficult game to predict. They're extremely similar in a ton of major stats. But I'm going to take TCU. They are the slightly better team, and I think that's the difference, although both teams are good offensively, scoring about 80 points a game. Gonzaga against McNeese is a really intriguing 5-12 game. Gonzaga's team, they didn't have a great regular season, but they're still a 5 seed, and they're ranked top 10 in offensive efficiency, and they score the 7th most points in the entire country. Now, for McNeese, they're another one of those teams. They've got over 30 wins, and they're one of those teams that could definitely make a deep run in the tournament. They average 80.4 points a game, which ranks 37th in the country. They shoot the ball very well from three-point range, shooting 38.8%, which ranks 8th nationally. And 4 of their top 5 scorers shoot at least 40% from 3. So this is a game that's going to see a ton of scoring, but give me the 12-5 upset, giving McNeese over Gonzaga. Kansas and Samford is another interesting one. So I don't usually pick a ton of 13/4 upsets, but they do happen, as they've happened in 4 of the last 5 tournaments. And if there's going to be a 13/4 upset, I think it will be this game. Kansas isn't the deepest team. They're already banged up with injuries to Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough. Now, for Samford, they're another team, elite offensively, top 5 in points per game and 3-point percentage. They're also 29-5, and their top 3 scorers are all over 40% from 3. So Samford, they can really score. I like their chances. It's going to be a tough game, but I got Samford with the upset, setting up a 12-13 matchup against McNeese. South Carolina and Oregon is another interesting one. Oregon's coming off a big run in the Pac-12 tournament to make it here. They're healthy, and they now match up against a South Carolina team that's good, but this is really tough to predict. Both these teams are very evenly matched. I'm going to take Oregon with the win. They're red hot, plus in their last 7 tournament appearances, they've won at least 1 game, so I've got Oregon advancing. Another 11/6 upset. Creighton and Akron is another pretty easy one. I've got Creighton. They're a good team. They're not going to lose to Akron. They're significantly better. Next, we have Texas against the winner of Colorado State and Virginia. This is another interesting one. Texas did not have an amazing season, but they are a 7 seed, and they now face either Colorado State or Virginia. Texas can score. They're ranked top 20 in offensive efficiency, and I think that's the difference, especially if they play Virginia, because Virginia just has a lot of trouble scoring, plus they play at an extremely slow pace. St. Peter's against Tennessee. Tennessee is one of the best teams in the tournament. They have dropped 2 games in a row to Kentucky and Mississippi State, but I don't see St. Peter's making a run to the Elite Eight this year. I don't see them winning a game. Tennessee moves on. Moving to the second round, back up in the East region, we have UConn against FAU. So FAU's been decent this season, but they're not beating UConn. UConn advances. They're just way too well-rounded. San Diego State and Auburn is interesting. Both these teams are ranked top 10 in defensive efficiency and top 40 in opponent field goal percentage. Auburn's the slightly better defensive team, plus their offensive metrics are significantly better, and I have them advancing. Plus, Auburn's been playing well after winning the SEC. BYU and Illinois is interesting. The previous game is going to be a defensive low-scoring game. This game is going to be high-scoring. Both teams score over 80 points a game, which ranks top 20 nationally. They're both top 12 in adjusted offensive efficiency. It's going to be a fun game. Illinois got the difference maker, and that is Terrence Shannon Jr., and Illinois moves on. Next, we have Drake against Iowa State. This is another game that is tough. I really want to pick Drake for the reason I picked Drake in the first round, and the reason I picked him was because of their offense. but they don't have to face an elite Iowa State defense that is the best defensive efficiency in the country. They allow the fourth fewest points a game. So as much as I would like to pick Drake, I think their run continues. I don't see them getting past this elite Cyclones defense. Moving to the West, we have North Carolina and Michigan State. As I said before, you never want to count out Tom Izzo and the Spartans, but I just don't think they can get past North Carolina. Both teams are good defensively, ranked top 10 in adjusted defensive rating, but North Carolina just too good with R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot. They move on. Next game, we have St. Mary's and Alabama. This is another really tough game. Alabama's elite offense faces off against a tough St. Mary's defense that is ranked 16th in the country in adjusted defensive rating and allows just 58 points a game, which is second best in the country. Now, this is really tough to predict. Great offense versus great defense. It's a true coin flip for me, but I'm going to take the higher seed in Alabama. New Mexico and Baylor is another interesting one. New Mexico, I would like to keep their run alive, but Baylor, they are really good. An insane offensive team. They have 6 players averaging double-digit points. But I'm going to stick with New Mexico. They're good defensively. I think they'll pull off the upset just barely. I'm not very confident in this pick, but I'm going to go with the upset in New Mexico. Nevada and Arizona. Nevada's good, but Arizona's just too good here. They're top 12 in both offensive rating and defensive rating, and Arizona moves on. Back up to the top of the bracket with Houston and Nebraska. Another game a lot like the last game. Nebraska's good, could potentially get the upset win, but Houston's too good on defense, and that will give Nebraska fits offensively. Houston moves on. James Madison and Duke is interesting. I'd like to pick James Madison with the upset win, but it's hard for me to see them getting any further. Duke is a really good offensive team, and I think James Madison will have a tough time slowing down Kyle Filipowski, and I've got Duke moving on. Texas Tech and Kentucky up next. Kentucky, as I said before, they can really score. Top 5 offensive rating, second highest scoring team in the country. Texas Tech is good, but Kentucky's just going to score way too much. Florida against Marquette is interesting. I'm considering picking Florida because they're a very good offensive team, scoring about 85 points a game, and they have a top 15 adjusted offensive rating. But Marquette's too good overall. They're a good offensive and defensive team, and Marquette will move on because of their defense specifically. Moving to the Midwest, we have Purdue and TCU. So Purdue is interesting to evaluate because obviously they lost last year in the first round, but they're still really good. Zach Edey is still dominant, and they are much better around him, shooting over 40% from deep, which is second best in the country. Plus, the only other 1 seed to ever lose to a 16 seed, Virginia, lost in 2018 to UMBC. They won the championship the following year. Now, am I saying Purdue's going to win the championship? I don't know. At least not yet. You have to wait and see. But Purdue will definitely win this game against TCU. Moving on, we've got the 12-13 matchup between McNeese and Samford. So I like both teams here. McNeese scores a lot. They score at a high rate. They're actually good defensively as well, ranking top 10 nationally in opponent points per game and opponent field goal percentage. And that's going to give them the edge here. McNeese advances to play Purdue. Oregon and Creighton is another interesting matchup. Oregon is red hot at this point as they continue their run from the Pac-12 tournament now into the tournament. And Creighton, they're the better offensive and defensive team, plus they have 3 players that score at least 17 points a game, so I'm going to take Creighton to move on. Texas and Tennessee is another interesting one, but I've got Tennessee here. Their defense is the difference. Their offense is good as well with Zakai Ziegler and Dalton Knecht, and Tennessee will advance to the Sweet 16. Moving on to the Sweet 16 in the East, beginning with UConn and Auburn. So this is actually the absolute earliest I can see UConn losing, and I can actually only see UConn losing this game if they play Auburn, which I have them playing Auburn. Now, both these teams are top 12 in adjusted offensive and defensive rating, so this is a great matchup. I'm going to take UConn to get the win. I think they're the slightly better team, and their offense is just going to be too much. Illinois and Iowa State is another really interesting matchup. We have an elite offensive team in Illinois against an elite defensive team in Iowa State. This is really tough. I like Iowa State a lot, but I'm going to go with my gut, which says Illinois. North Carolina and Alabama up next in the West region. This is a good matchup. A great Carolina defense against the highest scoring team in the country. I could definitely see Alabama with the upset win, and Alabama actually beat North Carolina in the regular season in overtime, where both teams went north of 100 points. But I'm going to take North Carolina to get the win. They're more well-rounded. Alabama can score, but I don't think their defense is good enough to get this one done. And North Carolina advances. New Mexico against Arizona. New Mexico's had a good run, but this is where it ends. Arizona's too well-rounded, and they'll advance to North Carolina in the Elite Eight. Houston and Duke in the South region. Another tough game to pick. Both teams are really good. Houston might be slightly better, but I'm going to take Duke with the upset. This is a true coin flip. Moving on to Kentucky and Marquette. This is another interesting one. Kentucky can outscore about anyone, if not anyone. Marquette has a really good defense, and they can score as well, but I think there's just too much offense for Kentucky, and they'll advance. And the final Sweet 16 games in the Midwest, we have Purdue against McNeese. So I thought about this one for a long time. A 1 seed has never lost to a 12 seed, but Purdue has only made the Elite Eight once with Matt Painter, and their last 4 tournaments, they've lost to a double-digit seed 3 times. Now, McNeese is good. They play fast-paced, they defend well, they score, but the question is, can they stop Zach Edey and also slow down Purdue from deep? I'm going to say they slow down Zach Edey, and they do just enough to advance. It's going to be a really good game, and McNeese sends Purdue home, losing to a double-digit seed again. Plus, I also need a Cinderella team, and I'll have that be McNeese. But I'm a huge fan of them. They won a lot of games, score at a high level, defend at a high level. They shoot from deep really well. I think they're one of your best bets when it comes to picking a Cinderella team. And the final Sweet 16 game, I have Creighton against Tennessee. This is another really tough game to predict. Tennessee is better defensively. Creighton's better offensively. I feel like Tennessee's a little bit underrated, and they're just not getting the hype they should be getting as a really good 2 seed. I've got them moving on, beating Creighton, but this is a really good. Creighton's also a really good team that they have Final Four potential as well. Moving to the Elite Eight, in the East region, we have UConn against Illinois. Illinois is a great offense. UConn has an elite defense ranked 11th in defensive efficiency, while Illinois' defense is ranked 93rd in defensive efficiency. I think that's just too big of a difference for Illinois to overcome UConn back in the Final Four. North Carolina and Arizona. This is another tough game to predict. Arizona scores the 3rd most points a game in the country at 87.9, and North Carolina is 22nd at 81.5. But I'm going to take Caleb Love and Arizona to beat his former team, and Arizona heads to the Final Four in a thriller. Duke and Kentucky is a fascinating matchup. 2 of the most accomplished programs in the sport. Kentucky can really score, but Duke is also very good offensively and significantly better than Kentucky on the defensive end. I'm going to take Duke because of that reason, and just like UConn, Illinois, I think Kentucky, and in the other case, Illinois, they can really score, but I don't think their defenses are good enough to make the Final Four. So Duke moves on. And McNeese and Tennessee. McNeese has gone on an incredible run. They're 1 win away from the Final Four. Tennessee, as I said a second ago, are one of the most slept-on teams I feel in the entire tournament. This is going to be interesting. I want to pick McNeese, but since 2005, only 5 double-digit seeds have made the Final Four. So I'm going to take Tennessee to advance to their first Final Four in program history. And the Final Four, we have UConn against Arizona and Duke against Tennessee. UConn-Arizona is a battle of 2 really well-rounded teams. They can do just about everything. Score at a high level, defend at a high level. I think UConn is just slightly better. Their guard pairing of Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton is as good as it gets, and UConn gets the win to move on to back-to-back national championship games. And for Duke and Tennessee, this is another really interesting game. Tennessee's defense is really good. They have to face a good Duke offense. But I'm going to take Tennessee in their defense. They have one of the best defenses in the country. Dalton Knecht has been one of the best players in the country this season, and that sets us up with a national championship game of UConn and Tennessee. So I think this is going to be a great game, but I've got UConn repeating as the national champs. They are the first repeat champs since Florida in 2007 and 2008. I think UConn is the best team in the country. They can play any type of game, high scoring game, low scoring game. They scored at a high level, defended at a high level. They're the most complete team in the entire tournament, and I have UConn repeating as national champions. But that is my bracket. Let me know who you guys have in the Final Four, who you have winning the national championship. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.